Hi, I'm Nancy Pearl, and the most recent book that I have read is Riding the Black Cockatoo by John Danalis. I would recommend this insightful story to our audience. John Danalis grew up in Australia. As a child, Danalis' family had an Aboriginal skull, which they called Mary, sitting atop their mantelpiece in the living room. John's father viewed the skull as just another piece in his large collection of knickknacks. Growing up, John never questioned where Mary had come from or who Mary truly belonged to. But after John grew up and started his own family, he went back to school and enrolled in an Indigenous writing course. When announcing to the class that he grew up with an Aboriginal skull on his mantelpiece, he was met with horrified stares. It was at this point that John fully understood how disrespectful it was to the Aboriginal people to have one of their skulls on his parents' mantelpiece. Following this announcement, John was determined to return Mary to his rightful tribe, despite his father's resistance. After researching, John discovered that Mary was originally part of the Wamba Wamba tribe. John's uncle found the skull after an Aboriginal burial site was ripped open due to the building of irrigation canals. John then looked up the Wamba Wamba people and scheduled a ceremony for Mary's official return. Along John's journey to return the skull, he talked to Aboriginal people for the first time in his life, despite having lived in Australia since birth. Danalis gained a different, more accurate perspective on the Aboriginal people, their culture, and their traditions. This book brings light to the European Australians' ignorance to the Indigenous culture and way of life. It causes the reader to re-examine their views on Aboriginal Australians and their views on any group in society that is deemed different. Major themes present in Riding the Black Cockatoo are that cultural tolerance is important in a society, and that stereotypes are often untrue and hurtful. John Danalis' experiences returning Mary greatly influenced his novel Riding the Black Cockatoo. Next, we are going to take a look at an interview I conducted with Mr. Danalis himself regarding his own thoughts and ideas on Riding the Black Cockatoo.
John, we're so glad you could make it today.
It's great to be here, Nancy.
John, could you begin by describing to our audience what the social treatment of the Aboriginal people in Australia was like as you were growing up, and then what it's like today?
When I was growing up, the Aboriginal people were stereotyped. This was displayed in a TV show called Skippy the Kangaroo. It stereotyped the Aboriginal people and depicted them as primitive and did nothing to provide insight into their cultures and traditions. This is the exposure that Australian children received to the Aborigines. There were offensive, racist jokes made, and since that was the way their parents acted, the children learned to act the same way. Although society today is much more tolerant, there is still some stereotyping and ignorance. There are still people that are too conservative regarding the Aboriginal rights, like my father used to be before Mary's return.
How has your personal perspective on the Aboriginal people changed following the return of Mary to his native tribe?
Well, as I described, I grew up in a society that was very oppressive to the Indigenous Australians. I didn't understand their long history in the land and their cultural values. My journey to return Mary, that I detail in Riding a Black Cockatoo, gave me a much better understanding of the Aboriginal way of life. I realized that previously I had mostly ignored the maltreatment of these people and did not understand them, but my journey to return Mary washed away not only my ignorance, but also the ignorance of my father. I met and talked to Aboriginal people one-on-one for the first time ever and realized that we are quite similar. They dress similarly, have similar houses, and have similar families. So I would have to say I gained a better understanding of their culture and began to see them more as equal. I hope that my readers had a similar experience following the reading of my story.
What are some of your other works?
I have written various children's books and books for young adults.
What are some of the themes in your works for young adults?
Usually, I write about overcoming fear.
How do you hope that your book has influenced others?
I just hope that they get a better understanding of the Indigenous people's suffering and stop the stereotyping and oppression as much as possible.
Riding the Black Cockatoo has definitely had an influence on Australian society. It caused the Australian people to rethink how they treated the Aborigines and how they view the Aboriginal culture. The Aboriginal people have been fighting for their rights ever since the Europeans arrived in Australia, and this book is another positive step forward to better treatment of the Aboriginals in Australian society. John Danalis dedicates his book to Bianca and Ebony, our future. Bianca is his daughter, and Ebony an Aboriginal girl he met. Bianca means white and Ebony black. It is pertinent that the Aboriginals and European Australians worked together to create a better future for Australia, just as his daughter and Ebony played together without taking any notice in the difference of their skin color. I would recommend this book to our viewers because it provides the reader with a different perspective on stereotypes and unfamiliar cultures. I hope you all go out and pick up a copy. Thank you for your time.